Welcome to Ear Biscuits, the podcast where two lifelong friends talk about life for a long time. I'm Link.
And I'm Rhett. This week at the Round Table of Dim Lighting, we are discussing friendships. And to be specific, the friendships of men with men.
Yeah, we're two of those. We're guys.
We are men friends.
Who are friends, and it's there's a lot of generalities here, and so we'll couch that. But it's I'm curious how much we fall into guy friendship tropes, and how much we subvert or expand beyond those.
It's funny you should ask that, Link. Yeah, I'll go ahead and give the disclaimer right now, since we're getting started, and we've already said the friendships of men, which might right from the top seem like it's not very inclusive. So I want to discuss that. Mm-hmm. And I think that today's discussion of friendship will be potentially helpful to you regardless of where you land on the gendrum, which is the gender spectrum. I call it the gendrum.
The gendrum.
I'm trying to, just sort of like
get
nice more efficient in my language.
That's a trendy term. The correct word is gendrum.
So, however, we're going to be talking about what a bunch of research has shown about the differences between the friendships of men and the friendships of women. And one of the reasons the research has shown differences between men and women's friendships is because traditionally these studies have divided people into the binary of men and women and looked at the differences. And so, as Jenna was pointing out a second ago when we were talking before we got started, there haven't been a lot of studies that are specifically identifying non-binary people or people along the gender spectrum and including that. That's beginning to happen more, so we'll have more insight.
Right.
But what we have found in sort of dividing people into that binary is that there are differences that, for a myriad of reasons, sort of nestle on each side of the spectrum. We do kind of observe certain things happening on this side of the spectrum and other things happening on this side of the spectrum, and they're really interesting differences. And so I think that they can sort of be illuminating and insightful regardless of where you're at on it. And also, yes, I think that in looking at what these studies have shown, I do think that we fall into some of these tropes, but then I think there's some of these tropes that we have kind of defied.
Okay. And the reason why we decided to talk about this is because it's just another facet of what we found ourselves exploring in our latest Rhett and Link Channel video, where we experience 1984, the year that we first met, and we construct a scavenger hunt mixed in with a music video that ends with us reclaiming the recess that we never had when we first met. But yeah, in the lyrics of the song, we're alluding to some of these generalities of like how guys relate to each other, or at least the trope of that. So we'll get into some of that, but watch the video. Watch it again,
please.
If you've already watched it.
Please watch
1984 on the Rhett and Link Channel. Watch all the videos we're putting out over there. We're very excited about it. But
okay.
Yeah, I think these studies is just a good backbone to then talk about our own experiences and our own feelings about relationships, friendships.
And Jenna is present, and Jenna is a woman, and Jenna may have a perspective on this. Do you have a perspective on friendship, Jenna?
I believe I do. I do have quite a few decade plus long friendships with other women.
Okay, so we'll see if
compare and contrast.
Yeah, where these things might line up. So
yep.
Let's start with, I think, the thing that would be, again, as you mentioned, these are general observations, right? And it's always, it's usually a mistake to take a general observation and then try to apply it to a specific person, because that specific person may or may not line up with the general observation. This is when we look at populations of people, groups of people, we tend to see trends. And so don't think any of this is like, well, if you're a man or you're a woman, or neither. These things do or don't apply to you. That's not what this is about. But I think this is pretty tropish. Studies generally find that women, on average, have higher emotional literacy than men, which includes emotional recognition, understanding, management, and expression. And these are some of the ways that plays out in a friendship. I'm just going to read some of the research here. So I will reference the studies at certain times. You might get tired of hearing it, but a study titled "Gender in Friendship: Why Are Men's Best Same-Sex Friendships Less Intimate and Supportive?" Published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin in 2011, found that women's friendships often involve more emotional sharing and self-disclosure compared to men's friendships. I'm going to read all these little things because they're all related, and then we can discuss.
Okay, yeah.
Men's friendships often involve less emotional intimacy compared to women's friendships, despite men desiring similar emotional intimacy from their friendships. They are less likely to actually achieve this intimacy due to fears of appearing feminine or gay. Hence the lyric, "We're not queer, but we're supportive," from our song. We were kind of playing into that. That's from a 2015 study, Men and Masculinities. Mm-hmm. And also, men's friendships may provide less emotional and practical support compared to women's friendships, as per a study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships in 2009. Okay, again, these are things that you might, if you were just like spitballing differences between men's and women's friendships, you might say that women seem to be more in tune emotionally with their friends than men.
I think we can even start with like the lyrics of the song, like playing off of the whole using physical maps in the video. You say, "You are here." And then the other guy says, "And I'm here for it."
Here for it.
You know, just saying, you know what? I enjoy our friendship. I'm here for our friendship. I show up for it. I look forward to it. I'm engaged here. To actually say that, to me, there's a barrier to even saying that. You know, even before you get to saying other things, is just expressing an appreciation and of like valuing a friendship it might feel a little awkward. It's just not the type of thing that, you know, a lot of people find themselves saying. And I think this study is saying that guys in general are less likely to say it. And I relate to that, you know, because it just feels like you're getting sappy. You know, you're expressing emotion, you're expressing care for a friend, and it's just not the type of thing that you find yourself doing. There's like some things to overcome. But we kind of backed into this place when I was like, there's something about like that place on the map. Like we were writing a song about maps, really, is what I thought we were doing. And then it was like the "you are here-ness" of it and being here for it. Like, oh, there's something there. And then that felt like a breakthrough in the song. And then for me at that moment when we were like, "You are here and I'm here for it," was, oh, now this song is about our friendship.
And queer rhymes with here.
Yeah, and then the next line.
And literally it was.
"We're not queer, but we're supportive."
Yeah.
And when you came up with that rhyming pair, I was like, oh, that's it. That's it.
It's one of those things where it's like the comedy was sort of leading, but then it was so on theme that we were like, yeah, this is, and I think this is specifically as it relates to us, lots of people think or insist on the fact that we are actually in a secret gay relationship, right? And I think that this is actually, I actually think that this is a symptom of the way that male friendships manifest, right? I think that the reason that people will be like, well, those guys must be gay, is actually just an indication that, well, there's something sort of broken with male friendships in general. So well, if you're together all the time, if you're sharing life in this way, you guys have worked together forever.
If you celebrate your
you
connection,
must be gay.
if you celebrate a connection, then it must, yeah,
it has to be romantic.
Right.
Whereas people would be much less likely to make that accusation. Not that being gay is, I mean, in this situation it sounds negative, but no, it's just like, we're not gay, but people think that we are. You wouldn't necessarily do that with two women that have been in a friendship for a long time. In fact, if my wife says, you know, if my wife is talking to somebody else and she says, my girlfriend said so-and-so, so-and-so, there's a moment where people are like, is she talking about
a partner, or is she talking about just
But I never have referred to you as my boyfriend. Men don't refer to their boyfriends as boyfriends. If a man says this is my
right.
boyfriend, you just assume that he's talking about his romantic partner. Again, we're not.
That's a problem.
We're not going to get into the like what part of this is biological and what part of this is cultural. The fact is that we are all kind of subject to the culture and the norms, and they're being redefined in helpful ways. But you can't help that if you were born and raised in this atmosphere where, for whatever reason, men have a reputation, and I actually think it is a reality, are not as emotionally available to one another. Even if they want to be, they have a tougher time being emotionally available in disclosing things. I mean, these studies talk about not the self-disclosure. They have less self-disclosure, less sharing of what's happening emotionally.
I remember back in grade school, I looked over a couple of guys' shoulders, including Zach, and there was this trend of making a list of your friends.
Ooh.
And these were guys that I remember doing this, and it was, where am I at on Zach's list? Where would he be on my list? Where can I make a list? Because I wasn't making a list. I'm just seeing if I'm on other people's list. Did you make a list? Do you remember this list happening back in grade school?
I remember
these are my best friends.
I remember more of the girls doing it. I didn't remember seeing any guys do it. But I guess I wasn't looking over Zach's shoulder.
I think I was on Zach's list, but I was kind of low.
Well,
I think that's accurate.
In Bowie's Creek, you get to like 7 or 8, and you run out of people.
Well, I might have been 5.
Okay,
or 6.
This is lower half.
Obviously, you would have been very high on my list, if not, and
if not
number 1. I mean, sometimes we.
What grade are we talking about?
It might be 2nd grade.
Well, 2nd grade, we were in a different class.
Right.
Out of sight, out of mind.
We were always on each other's list, practically at the top of the list, but I don't even think I actually made a list.
Never made a list.
But it was interesting that at that age, we felt like a little bit, there was some permission to do that. And then at a certain point, it's like, yeah, you might know that in our friend group growing up, we were the tightest, especially when you get to high school. That's when we started getting there was the rumors of being gay. And I think it's just, guys are missing out on expressing how much they value a relationship.
Do you remember how intense that rumor got? I've kind of totally forgotten about this, but there was a guy.
I'd forgotten about it entirely. I know you mentioned it on an Ear Biscuit like a year ago.
I'll mention it again because not everybody listens to every episode.
No.
I can't remember his name. And of course, this is at a time where culturally it was very different. Specifically where we were at, it was very different. And specifically what we believed in the worldview that we were operating under, which is that being gay was wrong. And not just wrong, but it was like shameful and the worst thing that somebody could accuse you of, right? It was,
sadly, yes.
That's the culture that we were in. And I think that this guy was writing it. This is freshman year. He was writing Rhett and Link are gay in multiple places around the school. And I found out who it was and confronted him. And I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I don't come in with fisticuffs, as they say. I come in with like, hey, bro, let's talk about this. And but
I don't know who it was.
I can't even remember the dude's name.
Oh, really? Okay, so it was.
I think
Okay.
his first name started with a D.
Okay.
Can't remember his last name. And that's not a dick joke. If you thought that.
That would have been a dumb
It
one.
would have been a bad dick joke. And he ended up, he had to go to the principal's office.
I don't know why I don't
He had to go to
I don't remember
He had to
this
go to the principal's
experience
office.
at all.
But I haven't thought about that.
Maybe I never
since
saw
the last
it.
time I talked about it on Air Biscuits. But yeah, that was so that accusation has been around for quite a long time, because when two guys spend as much time together as we always did,
Yeah.
and not just spending time together, like we'll talk a little bit about this in a second about sort of the nature of male friendships as they relate to activities. But we did a lot of stuff together, and it was like, well, if there's a talent show thing. Well, Rhett and Link are gonna be up there doing this thing together. Like, oh, there's a lip sync contest at the dance. Rhett and Link are gonna be DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, you know?
Oh yeah.
And so we came into high school with that kind of mentality. That we're like, yeah,
Peas in a pod.
We hang out all the time.
Attached at the hip.
And that was and also
Sexual partners.
I will say that we did not do ourselves any favors. We came in pretty hot to freshman year, if you don't recall, when within 2 weeks of starting school, we were both dating two of what were considered, back when they used to rank the girls in high school, which had horrible practice. But at Harnett Central High School, the ranking of the hottest girls included, we got 2 of the top 5, according to everyone at school, who were older than us in our freshman year. And this was a huge upset for me. I mean, like
but didn't that
kind of expected
didn't that
from you.
clarify things? What do
No, but I think that like it made this guy a little bit, he was a friend of one of them. That's where it came from. And he was older than us as well. And it's like these 2 Buies Creek boys come in, they're hanging out all the time, they're dating the hottest girls. They must be gay.
that adds up.
Or we need to establish that. Anyway, my high school started strong, didn't end as well. So I'm not saying anything about my prowess. I'm just saying
It's okay
had
to
a good start.
say, Rhett's my best friend, or we're best friends. But to say to the other person, I value our friendship, like I care about you. And, I think we'll get into more of the emotional stuff with like the next study, right? So like talk about the L word. But yeah, it wasn't something that we did. It's something that, given the trajectory of our friendship and our career, and kind of building our career on our friendship, there's been this journey of exploring every aspect of it. We're doing it again right now, that I think has opened us up to levels of appreciation that I think otherwise it would have been really hard to get here. And
I think if your friendship
most
is,
guys don't get to that point.
If your friendship with someone is one of the calling cards of your brand, which you make a living through and you've kind of built a company around. Now, first of all, that's fraught with its own issues, right? Of navigating that.
Yeah.
But it's also very good for making sure that you are talking to each other, and even as part of your brand, you're talking about your relationship. And I think about, I don't have any other friendships where that is the case. I have close friendships, and I have friendships with guys that there's an emotional intimacy that can immediately pick up where it left off, even if like we haven't talked for months. It'd be like, oh, there's not any awkwardness. I'm going to ask you how you're doing. I'm going to ask you about how's fatherhood, how's your marriage, how's your job. Like, it gets intimate very quickly because that's the nature of those friendships.
Yeah.
But it's a different thing when you've got it kind of built into the structure of your schedule. For the average guy who doesn't have that, it happens through what we're going to talk about next, which is shared activities, which it creates this.
Right.
which is what a lot of male friendships are based on. But
So
before we get into that,
We gonna promote
I want
the comedy special?
the stand-up comedy special.
Yes.
Over on the Mythical Society. You know, we've got a bunch of people here at Mythical who are very funny, very talented, and have specific experience with stand-up comedy. And we put together a little special for a little crowd of Mythical folk. And we had a
exclusively for
great
you,
time.
if
We
you're
had
a Society
great
member.
time. So you can watch that on the Society. It's gonna. So if you're listening to this audio the day that it comes out, it's gonna be Wednesday, June 7th. If you're watching this, well, today or anytime after, you can go over there and watch it.
It's already out. And let me tell you, it exceeded my expectations, which were not low. Lots of good laughs.
And it's first, second, and third degree. This is available for all members of the Society.
So go over there, mythicalsociety.com. Watch the comedy special. So what's the next study talk about?
Okay, there's a few, but this
Okay.
is all about friendship maintenance and shared activity. So a study in 2006, The Glass Partition, Obstacles to Cross-Sex Friendships at Work, published in Human Relations, suggests that women may put more effort into maintaining friendships, often through communication and mutual sharing, whereas men's friendships may be more reliant on shared activities. And then another study, men's friendships are more often based around shared activities like sports or hobbies, according to studies like Gender Differences in Friendship Patterns, 1996. So again,
If you got this generalization that if you see a group of women in a circle and you see a group of men in a circle, you can guess what they're talking about. It's much more likely that women are talking about, they're connecting, and the men are just saying, well, what are we going to do?
or they're talking about a shared interest.
The guys are.
Sports
Yeah.
creates for like a
Guys stand around a grill and talk
super
about the meat.
stereotypical
sports.
male. I mean, I've said this before that like one of the things, I would say that if you were doing a percentage breakdown of my conversations with my dad, my text thread with my dad, a very high percentage of that is sports related. Because I know the kinds of sports events that he watches, that I also watch, and I'm like, well, this is happening right now. He's probably watching this. If I text him, we are currently experiencing the same thing.
Which is
And
cool.
we're connecting over that.
Yeah.
Again, in some ways, it ends up being this thing that like, men really just want to be the joke is men really just want to be intimate with one another and self-disclose and be around one another. But the only way that they could do that is direct all that passion and that energy towards a guy with a ball who's not either one of them. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, we got all this energy. We just want to hug each other, but we want to watch that guy slam that guy. And that's how we're going to experience it.
I mean, definitely the doing of things, it just seems like it's just the default. What are we gonna do? Let's do something. Let's go for a hike. I mean, we were talking even a few minutes ago. It's like, okay, well, let's plan something. Should we go? Let's go surfing again. It's been a long time since we've been surfing. And it's kind of an easy way to then know that you're gonna connect, but it's like we're doing something shoulder to shoulder. It might be watching something or walking towards something or surfing towards something, but it's a lot easier to then find the connection along the way it feels.
But it's
than just
also
like
easier
sitting down and just staring at each other. Like,
But it's also easier to not connect too.
it is.
So it's like, again, you're together and this common interest has brought you together. And I would say that a lot of guys have a friend who is their blank, fill in the blank friend. He's my golf buddy.
Yeah.
My poker buddy.
Mm-hmm.
The whatever. And so it's just like this guy falls into this category because I do this thing with him. Whereas if we're not, like, I don't know what I'd do if we weren't playing golf. And, I think, thankfully, that this is my guess is that this is also a generational thing. I would suspect that guys in their 20s, this is not nearly as much the case as it is for guys in their 40s or guys older than us. Like the older you are, the more you are kind of associated with an older generation, the more this is probably the case because things are shifting and kind of opening up.
Yeah.
And it's becoming, these stereotypes are kind of being revealed as being sort of, in many ways, sort of a result of these cultural norms that have been reinforced and people are having their way with those and breaking them open.
Yeah,
and men can be intimate in the same way.
So I like where the trend is
and women
heading.
can just play golf together, just for the sake of playing golf.
I mean, Jenna, how do you feel about these generalities when it comes to like guys just like to do stuff together and women just get together and just weep?
Well, that was pretty harsh.
I mean, I'm just trying to
I don't feel like you ever
overgeneralize.
said that that's what women do when they get together. Is they just
No, I was joking, but more there's like more of a permission to connect emotionally and to share thoughts and feelings, self-disclosure, as we talked about.
I will say because I have those friends that are kind of categorized in the things I do with them. Like I have my universal annual pass friends who we always go to the park together and that's where we catch up. But like that's how we started. But as our like friendships evolved, like we get together outside of the park now and we check in on each other. It's not all about universal. Like we have a text thread that's not all about like universal stuff. It's about like other life things as well. So I think like that, yes to the activities, but I feel like that's what you all do as well. You have the activities, but you also talk about life when you do those things.
Yeah, we do.
Definitely.
I mean, I have a text thread with my dad friends, and but it's mostly the text thread is just planning the next thing.
Text threads are one thing.
And our college friends, that text thread is planning the next thing, which may be a phone call.
And now,
but there's not a lot of like.
To our credit,
connecting over
I
the
will
text.
say that with the college buddies, we haven't been great about the frequency lately, as everyone's lives have gotten back to normal. But during the pandemic, we started a regular connection. That was, again, it was about just connecting, and because everybody in that group is an emotionally mature guy who understands the benefit of that type of interaction and that sort of intimacy. And interestingly, I think a lot of that came from our background in church, but also the specific type of ministry that we were involved in with like crew, Campus Crusade.
There was a lot of sharing in circles.
Yeah. You get together
Like
with a
literal
group.
circles.
You get together with a group. Mostly it's divided by gender. At least it was with Crusade. So it's like you got a guy Bible study, you got a girl Bible study. And unlike those heathens in InterVarsity that put the guys and the girls together, what were they thinking? But you got pretty good at being honest and like disclosing and having those conversations. So I think a lot of that with those guys, because we all got to know each other in that environment, is kind of based on that level of intimacy, which was a little bit of a weird sort of like benefit that we got. We don't agree with everything that we learned in that setting, but there were some life skills that we reference quite often. But to me, it's about your phone calls, right? And again, I'm just talking about my wife, my beautiful wife, Jessie, who makes phone calls to people, and the purpose of the phone call is the phone call.
Yeah, that's
okay.
wild.
Okay. I never do that. If I call you, I have a reason that the phone call is serving. And I'm not saying I do this on purpose. I don't calculate this. I'm just saying, and I probably should just call people to catch up. But it's always, even when it is just to catch up, it is precipitated by an event like it's their birthday. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How you doing? It's your happy birthday. Let me talk to you and figure out how you're doing now. But no calls out of the blue. And this makes me not as good of a friend. I will freely admit that a good friend, I think, will call you and just catch up. But it's just not in me naturally to be like, I'm going to call this person to connect Whereas every time I hear my wife talking to someone on the phone, it seems like the only purpose is to connect. You know what I'm saying? She's not.
Yeah, I don't do that. I mean, I'll call, but it's usually now it's just like a text to like, well, let's get coffee. You know, I want to catch up, but like I don't consider the phone like a viable option for that. I got to go a step further. There's got to be a coffee involved or grabbing a beer.
Jenna, you call people just to talk?
No, I am also horrible about this. I'll do it with like a very select few, like a couple family members and like one or two friends, but usually there's some other, like I need their advice on something and that's why I'm called. Like it's not just to call or like I haven't seen my niece in a while. I want to see my niece, which I guess is like a just because call. But yeah, I don't do that at all. And I have friends who do that constantly. Like my best friend has friends of hers that will call her every single day just to, and I think it's crazy. I'm like, whoa.
That's a lot.
You just talked yesterday. And like,
yeah.
So I think that's too much for me, but like the relationship I have with my best friend, like her and I don't have that. Like we see each other constantly because we also live together. So it's like, I'm not going to just call her out of the blue for no reason anyway.
I'm going to go in this other room to call you again.
But like she has like many friends who will call on a regular basis and she will call on a regular basis just to chat. And I'm like, we are not the same person. I cannot do this.
Well, and then, you talked about the L word. We could talk about that a bit. It kind of ties these first two things in together. The
ultimate emotional disclosure, saying that you love somebody.
Jessie ends 70% of her conversations with "I love you," and
so that's meaningless.
No. Like Jessie, will talk to someone who works for her at Jessie Lane Interiors, and in the conversation with "I love you." I mean, I think it's wonderful and beautiful, but it is so different than the way I like. Okay, so back to our song.
I've never told an employee that I love them.
Back to our song, because the lyric is
like a brother from another mother, but I won't tell you I love you because that might make it weird.
Weird rhymes with queer, and here again, it's the rhyme leads us.
Because it was, if it's like I love you, it's just like it's weird out of the blue. I mean, there's people like I talked to Dad on dispatches about there's people who wrote him emails about how we end every podcast saying that we love each other, which is what we do on a phone call. But there's a lot of people who they don't have that with their parent, and I just chalk that up to if you don't do it from like, if you don't establish that that's part of something that you do, then it's hard to start doing it at a later date.
Yeah, it was not commonplace. In my household growing up, I felt a lot of love and I was shown a lot of love. And both of my parents would say I love you in certain contexts. But as a way to say goodbye, it just wasn't a part of the way that we talked to each other. So there wasn't an I love you at the end of a phone conversation once I was in college. However, at some point as adulthood set in, especially once we moved out here, and now we're like in a different place. And there's much less interaction. When we lived in the same town or like right, very close to each other, it was different. Regularly say I love you to end a conversation with either of my parents or my brother at this point. But I think that's also a function of the fact that we, like as our friend group developed when we got to LA, we made friends with people who said I love you at the end of hanging out.
Yeah, there were a few of those.
Other dudes that you would like hug when they showed up and hug when they left, and you say I love you. And I was kind of
or it might be love you, man.
Yeah.
If you add a yeah and a man,
right,
then it's kind of like that couches it a little bit.
Yes.
But that's still something.
But we've talked about this before. This is where it gets a little bit weird with us
Yeah.
because we share many of the same friends, and we have these gatherings where, okay, if
There's a guy you don't love as much as you love me
If
that
Mike is
you're telling
there.
that you love him because he told you he loved you.
We'll talk
I'm like,
about
well,
Mike.
what about me?
So Mike is our mutual, really good friend of ours, and you may know him as Science Mike. And Mike said a lot of the things that we together that we would do, and that's the kind of relationship we have with Mike. It's hugging, it's saying I love you, and then I'll be hugging him by saying I love you, and there you are, you do the same thing to him,
Right.
And then it's I guess the next logical step is for Rhett and Link
Right.
to hug and say I love you. But we may do it, but it's sort of this let's be funny about
It's a
it.
little silly.
Because it's just I'm gonna see you at 8 a.m. You know what I'm saying?
And it's not, it's just not something that we ever did. So is there ever a point when we'd have to make a decision to change? I think the first times that we said I love you to each other were in the context of a video where it was
Really?
I think so. I think on GMM or something where it was just
That might be true.
and it was for the comedy of it, but the comedy was we never actually say this to each other. There's no doubt that we do love each other, but it's that brotherly thing of you had to make a decision to start telling Cole that you love him,
Yep.
and that was an adult decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Cole's my brother.
I'm not defending. I'm just trying to explain a little bit. It's an interesting dynamic. I think that there's friends that I've made now that as an adult that are more emotionally connected to themselves and will say and are more comfortable saying, I miss you. I haven't talked to you in a while. Or I had a friend text me and we were talking about getting together. And I'm on this, when do you want to let's hang out. And then he was like, yeah, I really miss your energy is what he told me. And I was like, man, that made me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not something that I said to him. But it's something that it was what was behind me initiating the text to say, hey, how are you doing? Let's hang out. And then, but the truth of it was, hey man, I really value our friendship and I miss your energy. Let's get together. But it's a way of speaking that just wearing your heart on your sleeve. I'm a fan of that. I feel like I do that. I do a decent job of that at certain times, but I still have to make up my mind to do it. And I'm inspired by when I receive that level of openness from another guy friend, especially. It's oh, I'll note that. And maybe I can change. Maybe I can be that person who puts myself out there a little bit more and say, I miss hanging out. It's been too long. I miss you. Because saying that is just as hard as saying I love you, almost maybe,
Yeah, I think for me, there's two things.
The vulnerability to it.
I think one thing
doesn't
is that,
fall in a masculine column.
is that I am definitely an introvert. When it comes to where I get my energy from, I get it from being alone. And so
Okay.
I love being with people. I love being in groups of people, and I have a really good time. And obviously, introversion and extroversion is really just a framework to understand, people. And I think that it is best explained as where you kind of get recharged. Is it with someone or not with something? It's not really your personality characteristics. Because obviously, I'm comfortable in a group, and I look people in the eye, and it's. I can be outgoing, in other words, and comfortable in a group or in conversation.
But you don't find yourself desiring.
Yeah, most of the time
What?
I find myself desiring to be alone and be doing something where I kind of get lost in thought, or I listen to something, or I just that. So for me, I have to make an effort to be like, oh, there's value in this. So there's not a natural tendency to be like, I don't sit around and think, oh, I miss fill in the blank, and I need to spend some time with him. It's like it just doesn't. That's not how I think about it. I think more about an activity, like I would love to do this, and that person would be great to do that with.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then I think another thing is that, I think it's important to give yourself grace in this area because...
Me? Or anybody?
Anybody.
Okay.
And you included. Because I think there's truth to what you just said, which is like, can I be more of whatever it is, be more available, be more vulnerable, be more expressive? And I do think that yes, because you don't, I'm not trying to make an excuse of like, well, everyone's different and everyone expresses things differently. But one of the things that I have found is because I'm not super expressive when it comes to these things. But because that's my base level sort of way of being, when I make a decision to be expressive or to say something, it carries a lot of weight. And so for me, I find myself thinking like, okay, well, I am this way for some reason. I'm continuing to try to get more in touch with myself through therapy. I want to be more available to people, and I'm continuing to work on that. In the meantime, one of the benefits of that is that these things carry kind of a lot of weight given the nature of my personality. It's like there's a weakness that can become a strength at times. Whereas you might have somebody who's sharing all the time and there's a benefit and a strength in that because you can feel super supported by them all the time. But it's almost like cursing. You know, I've tried to explain this to my kids if I feel like I hear you cursing too much. And it's not that I think there's a problem with cursing. I think that cursing is a very handy linguistic tool for emphasis. And I think you want to keep it special so you can use it at the right fucking moment.
That wasn't it.
To make a point. So anyway, I'm just saying I'm just saying that that's one of the ways that I give myself some grace in this, because I think that there are people that this would come more naturally to, and it does come more naturally to them. And so I think that there's sort of like there's a framework of, or there's a patchwork of people, and it's like, well, this person I experience in this way, and I like that. I'm not saying this is an excuse to stay closed off. I'm just saying this is a way of giving yourself grace as you grow.
But I'm talking about something a little different.
Okay.
I think I'm not talking about conjuring up feelings you don't have. I'm talking about expressing feelings that you do have. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me, I'm talking in general. That if I notice that I miss somebody, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while.
Yeah.
I want to go, I want to see him. And then what I haven't done is said that. I haven't said, you know what? It's been I miss you. Like that phrase is very vulnerable. And it almost feels like it carries, you know, it's putting yourself out there. One of the things that's what I'm trying to do more of is I've actually been in a phase, you talk about like introversion, extroversion, coming out of the pandemic that's what I thought it was related to. And maybe it still is, but cultivating some friendships. Like I've met a smattering of new people over the past couple of years, and some of them know each other, some of them don't, and I've prioritized like cultivating those relationships, being the one to initiate and say, hey, let's get together. Let's hang out. It's been a while, let's catch up, you know? And some of those people are like, they're just totally responsive. And maybe you would fall more into that camp in the way that you described. Like, I'm friend with this guy who's more, I think he's more introverted. Like, I'm still getting to know him, but like, every time I initiate, he's always game. And he's always like, here's a couple of dates, let's make this happen. And then even to the point where it's like, I was like, I could do Thursday or Friday. And he's like, I'll keep both of them open. It's like, okay, this guy never initiates with me, but he's always responsive. So that tells me that he values our friendship, especially when he says, I'm gonna keep 2 days open so that we can make sure this happens. Like, to me, those are things that I noticed that was like, oh, he's reciprocating in his own way. Mm-hmm. And with another new friend that I made, he's the guy who's more like, I miss your energy. Like he's the one who's, we initiate about the same, but he puts his emotions out there, and he's more vulnerable, and that encourages me to do that too. And that there's some reward there, that's like, okay, I know where we stand, and it's not just, we're not speaking in code about, well, is this really just about golfing, Mm-hmm. Because when I get together with people, I do want to connect. Like, I like connecting with the person. I like getting to know them. It's not, with both of those relationships, it started out with we're both interested in the same thing. A lot of times it's music, so it's like, let's get together and listen to music, That actually is a big factor in both of those friendships, because it's another thing that I've really identified a passion, and like putting those two things together. I love connecting with making friends, deepening friendships, and I love music. And if I can find people that's really the beginning of our relationship, then that's a good 1-2 punch. But then, I've talked about Nick, my mountain biking friend. It's like whenever we're mountain biking, it is an occasion for us to talk about other things, but like we pretty much, sometimes there might be a camping trip occasionally or an off-roading trip in the past, but like it is pretty much relegated to that. But then within that, you pick those moments where it's like, oh, we're connecting interpersonally, if not emotionally. I'm sharing some things and then seeing, hey, does he want to reciprocate? Where does this go? And so it's rewarding. What's my point? What do you hear me saying?
Well, you're kind of just describing your experience.
The part about not conjuring feelings, but expressing the feelings that you have, I think is where I'm at in terms of taking a risk, and I'm seeing the rewards of that like, oh, even texting somebody feels like a risk sometimes. It's like, hey, do you want to hang out this weekend?
Yeah, I think.
And putting yourself out there, it's a hard thing to do for me, but I'm experiencing the rewards of it, and it kind of helps me.
I mean, I think that there's two stages. There's the having the initiative, communicating that you want to. Well, you're kind of talking about it's not nuance. There's a difference in like saying I want to do this thing with you or saying I miss you. There's a difference in those two things.
Right.
And if that's the way that you want to play it, I think that's healthy and good. I don't necessarily think that the guy who says, I would like to play golf with you, who actually kind of means I want to hang out with you, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that necessarily. It's like, well, if you want to hang with somebody, you have to tell them that. You can't tell them that you just want to play golf.
No.
You're not saying that.
No.
And I'm just clarifying that you're not saying that. For me, it's the, once I am with someone, I don't like, I'm an open book. I'm not, I don't withhold things. I'm not like cold. I'm not, I'll talk about anything with anyone. And I'll get as personal, as vulnerable, not as vulnerable and as quickly as my wife, But she is an exception to the rule of how quickly you will know her life story. But I'm pretty close behind her in my willingness to kind of share and be intimate with somebody. Even people that I just meet at a party, but also people in the context of friendships. Where I struggle is taking the initiative to set up the situation where that will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like sometimes Jessie even might say that. She'd be like, why don't you call so-and-so? You know, like, why don't you just call him? Why don't you see what he's up to or whatever, if I'm like don't have anything going on or whatever. And then my tendency will be like, well, that would be fun, but it would kind of also just be fun to like watch some show that you don't want to watch with me. You know, and I have to, so I'm not.
Yeah, the extrovert
I think
energy.
that could be overdone. For me, I have to make a decision to be like, okay, I need to take the initiative here, because once I'm in that situation, like if I'm playing golf with somebody, which
you're
is
there.
Not something I'm.
You're
doing,
there
right?
for it.
It's like I'm playing, but I'm also like, hey, like, let's talk about something else. And I get frustrated when I go into social situations, often with other guys, and it becomes very clear that they only are interested in the game that we're playing. Like if you play, sometimes you might play poker with somebody, with a group of guys, and it's like, no time for talk, man. This is about strategy, and it's kind of like, well, this is going to be a little bit boring for the next 3 hours.
Yeah, or there's
know?
no self-disclosure.
Yeah,
ever. Yeah, it's like.
Yeah, so I'm not into that. I just need to take the initiative.
And some people
spend
take
the time.
longer, right? I think when it comes to us, one of the things, you know, as we've invested in our friendship over the past year and still had some really good conversations, one of the things that I took from that, and this kind of plays into, I think, that the next study that you want to bring up about conflict or whatever it is, I realized that we value our shared experiences and they build into our friendship, but I'm not going to hold it against you if I'm the one that initiates more often than you do, because I know that you will be responsive, that you're up for it, that I don't read into it. It's like, well, if Rhett really cared about me, he would initiate. He would come up with the thing. He'd invite me to do the thing. Because of what you've already talked about, and I know that about you. For me, it's like, well, if I have this felt need for us to hang out, then I should initiate that. And then the ball's in your court how you're going to respond. And then you've got a very good track record of being very up for, you know, like, I pretty much know they're going to be like, absolutely, you know? And now I'm applying that to other people that I don't know as well. It's like, I'm not going to read into the fact that he never asked to hang out with me, because he is always up for it when I do initiate. And I don't think I had I don't think I ever had a chip on my shoulder that, like, I think there was a time when I was tempted to have a chip on my shoulder that, like, you weren't coming up with the idea for us to just hang out as friends or something. And I think part of my growth is the insight that, like, I don't think that I shouldn't be taking that personally. You know, it wasn't, that didn't reflect your feelings, the feelings that you had or didn't have for me, because you were always responsive if I were to initiate that.
Well, and I think that there's another aspect of our friendship, and I, as you well know, am sort of constantly overwhelmed with all the things that I think that we should be doing.
Yeah.
Professionally.
Right.
Right? And I, in a sort of, I talked about this on the solo episode, and in a somewhat potentially pathological fashion, I'm constantly thinking about work. I never stop thinking about, I mean, if something is happening to me in life, I'm taking a note, I'm coming up with an idea. Like, it is a constant stream, waking up in the middle of the night, having a dream, waking up, like it's always relates back to my professional life and how this can be translated into something that we could do and put in front of an audience. It's just the way I've always been. And so because we have the things that we really want to do, which is to create, and then we have the things that we have to do, which is all the logistical things involved with running a business like this, that I think we're pretty good at it, but I also think that it's not the thing that we want to do. Like I was never interested in being a boss. Never something that I was like, I didn't wake up and be, I want to be a boss of over 100 people one day. Like not a childhood dream.
No.
I wanted to be a boss in like the 2010 lingo, you know,
with the W,
that kind of boss.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make things, and so when I think about, I look at the time that we have together, and every moment that we have together, I'm just thinking like, what can we do? What can we make? How can we fight for this time that we have to do all the things that I think we still should do before we die, right? We're old, we gotta keep doing things. And it's not that I'm like, I don't have time for surfing or skiing or fishing, which we never have done.
Let's go fishing.
But very quickly, as you know, if you go surfing with me, well, I'm still gonna talk to you about the things that it is. And to be clear, I don't. I hope you don't. It's not. I ask you lots of questions about your life and your kids, and I'm not interested in having a personal conversation about things. But because I feel like I've got this box full of ambitions that's constantly overflowing, it's just like it's got to fit in our relationship. In our time that we have to talk to each other, which is in between all the stuff that we have to do, that I think that sometimes in the very quick shuffling that's happening in my brain about what's the most important thing right now, is it to connect or is it to accomplish? I'll too quickly move to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so it's more like, you know, I wouldn't do it because I value my relationship with my wife and my family. But if my wife and family didn't exist or were robots that had no feelings, then I would be like, hey man, let's work on Saturday and Sunday too.
I know you would.
I'm just telling you, that's what I would do. Because it's fun. It's fun to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm doing the activity that brings me the most joy. It's not, surfing brings me a lot of joy, but in the ranking of activities, creating is more fun than surfing. And so it's like, that's my hobby. That's what I want to do. That's I got a side project that's just creating something. It's just because that's what I want to do.
Right.
And I want to do it with you. So I think that's one of the dynamics that ends up.
Don't take that out of context.
That's one of the dynamics that manifests itself in our friendship.
Right, but I'm still gonna say, all right, let's do something, and we can't talk about work.
Yeah,
and
I appreciate that.
We can't do work.
I think it's important.
Yeah. What was the final study?
Well, there's multiple. I'm not done.
What's the conflict point?
A study called Gender Differences in Social Focus Among Friends in 2009 in the International Journal of Behavioral Development found that women take conflicts more personally, while men may be more likely to overlook them.
I gotta say, I mean, the female relationships that I observe the most are like Christy and her friends, like, you know, hearing their conversation, Christy's side of the conversation, all that type of stuff. You know, it's like, I don't want to throw her under the bus, but like the dynamics at play in all of those relationships are so complicated compared to what I feel like when I relate to my guy friends. Well, and I feel like I'm playing into the trope here.
I don't have it written right here, but it was in the same study or another one around conflict that said that women are more likely to end a relationship over a conflict than men. So interesting.
Than a man.
Interesting that there's more emotional disclosure and more intimacy, so the relationships are deeper, which I think ultimately maybe one thing about that is it increases the stakes. So if men have a shallower connection that's based on golf,
right,
well, you're gonna get into a fight over like somebody cheat, like, you know what I'm saying? So maybe that's why this tends to be a pattern.
I feel like
I've never ended a friendship.
Well, you know I have.
Ever.
We talked
I've
about
never ended a friendship. And
ironically, the guy who said I miss you, I then ended the friendship.
I mean, I had one of my friends in high school screwed my girlfriend. And I wasn't even screwing her because I didn't believe in premarital sex. I broke up with her. And I'm not proud of this, but like he was still my friend. And it was like probably wrong. I was probably, but I was kind of like, dude, you know, yeah.
Jenna, can you be the judge on this one? Or not, whatever you want to say.
I'm not going to be a judge on that one.
I'm not proud of it. I mean, maybe I should have been an asshole to him. But
I feel like
I'd say it all depends on how. Did you treat her the same? Were you an asshole to her?
I wasn't an asshole to her.
Okay.
I was just like, I think that this means that we're breaking up. I love to act like I'm really mad for videos on the internet and people think that I'm being real, but like I actually have a really difficult time getting mad at people.
I don't remember you. I think you were hurt, but I don't think you were mad.
I'm never like gonna go in and like yell at somebody. I was just like, we're breaking up or whatever. And then like I saw him the next day and we both kind of like, it was like I just couldn't bring myself to hate the guy because I was like, well, we've broken up.
I don't want to pick this scenario apart. What I was asking Jenna about was this general idea that men, like, well, I'll speak for myself. I feel like if it's like I can slot people into different categories of friendship. Like, okay, you know what? The more that I get to know this guy, the more that like now he's kicking back out. He's not going to be an inner circle guy. He's going to be kicked back out a little bit. And like, and if there's a level of incompatibility or we get our wires crossed, I just don't find myself in drama. I'm just going to put it that way. It's like, okay, this guy, we're not, I won't talk to him as often. Or I'll see him as this type of friend, not this type of friend. And I'm not going to share that information with him anymore, but I just learned my lesson. It's like a categorization, a compartmentalization of levels of friendship. And I feel like it's because the bar is so low for guy friendships that the bar is higher in general for female friendships. Am I off base, in your opinion?
I don't think you're off base. I think it's a larger cultural discussion of women being told they cannot be confrontational. So then when confrontation does happen, it can really end things. Whereas men can have little confrontations and those are fine. But like I don't like confrontation either. But I have ended friendships because things went to a personal level, and it's how we culturally have established those relationships. Like women already have this strong bonded emotional thing behind it, which I mean it's cultural, but then it's also it can be a bit hormonal as well. Of like we have formed those, and I think it's. I don't. It's hard to say that it's male or female because I very much am. I don't get super emotional. Like I know that friends of mine, female friends of mine, take things to heart a lot different than I do, and because I understand that I phrase things different and I speak to them different, and I think that's just a level of growth and therapy for me instead of like when I was younger, oh, we don't vibe on this. I don't like this person. We're not gonna be friends.
Yeah.
Period.
I think I might have an analogy that is helpful because I agree with you that again, we're talking in generalities, and a lot of people's opinion, which I know is at least it's to some degree true, is that a lot of these generalities exist because of cultural norms and things that have been put onto people. And so if there is a situation in which, like if you're in a pool and men's relationships more often are in the shallow end of the pool and women's relationships are more often in the deep end of the pool, well, you're more likely to drown in the deep end of the pool, right? If that's where you're swimming, the stakes are higher and it could result in a lost, somebody sinks to the bottom, right? And there's consequences to getting into a conflict in the deep end of the pool, right, that don't exist in the kiddie pool.
And mistakes for women in conflict are a lot, there's a lot more pressure on women for those conflicts that happen than for men. Like if women have this conflict happen, we're dramatic, we're too aggressive, we get it labels us as this type of person that then no one wants to work with or be around, whereas men can have those same conflicts.
And he's just standing up for himself.
Yeah.
Right.
And that totally makes sense. That's helpful. I also think for guys, it's just, it's in the shallow pool analogy, it's like, oh, well, this doesn't matter that much, Like the level of connection is just less, so I'm just I'll compartmentalize them, or I'll just, that's the end of that friendship, and I didn't even realize it.
Right. If you've got a guy that you play golf with, and he gets tendonitis, and then it's just like, oh, I hadn't talked to Chuck in 4 years.
Right.
His elbow's messed up. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, because it was so based on something.
Yeah, apparently he wasn't a true friend. He was just a golf buddy.
There's a couple of sort of things that you may not have anticipated that I wanted to make sure that we talked about before we close this discussion, which I hope has been helpful. I'm sure.
I don't know if it's been helpful, but it's.
Again, it's just like I know we're kind of we're going to each side of this spectrum and like living there, and I know that can be irritating to some people, but hopefully, because as Jenna said, that like as she has demonstrated already, that like, well, in this situation, I would actually behave more like what your studies show how a man would react. Again, because it's like these general characteristics don't apply to individual people; they apply to groups.
So give us some more.
So I'll give you some more general stuff. Virtual friendship. According to a 2015 Pew Research Center report, men are more likely than women to consider online contacts as friends. So like somebody that is, and this is maybe generational too, because like I don't have, in fact, someone asked me recently if I had, and you were there, they were talking about.
It was me. I was the one who asked you.
Oh, well, we were at a party. I didn't realize you were the one who started that discussion.
I think I was.
Do you have people that you're just friends with online? Like, is there somebody that
social network friend?
And then your wife was like, yeah, I have a thread, an Instagram thread, where it's like a text thread, but it's just on Instagram, and I'd never met these people. And I was like, oh, that's something that can happen. Like, it was like, I don't have anybody. Now, there might be some people that I've like, there's a few people that are like public figures that we've connected via social media, like DMs. But it's not a friendship. It's more just like, yes, we've sent 3 messages over the past 4 years about specific things, but it's not a friendship that's maintained online. And I definitely don't see them as a friend.
Yeah, I don't relate to this.
Friendly acquaintance.
It's so weird the way that we experienced social media as it was happening, that it was like,
it's tough to apply
as content creators. It kind of short circuited actually using it as like for personal connection. We never really saw it that way as it was developing, and then by the time everybody caught up, we were just these people who were just pumping out content through these pipelines.
Yeah.
So we never utilized it that way.
Yeah, we made
so it's interesting
5,000 Facebook friends for the
right
promotional quality of it.
Yes.
And then still have most of them, but don't go on Facebook.
No.
A study published in PLOS 1, I guess that's +1 with an O, 2014, sex differences and social focus across the life cycle in humans. Exciting stuff. Suggested that men tend to have larger but less intimate social networks compared to women. So
more acquaintances.
if you started listing people that you would call your friends, and it's like, I don't know what you would constitute a friend, but apparently it would include online friends. On average, a man would have more, but they'd be less intimate, but it would be this larger network. I thought that was an interesting tidbit. I don't think it's necessarily anything that I relate to personally.
Yeah, I just don't have capacity for that's why I broke up with that guy who said he missed me, because I went through the whole thing when it happened on this show, but I didn't feel like I had the capacity to give him what I felt like I wanted to give to be an actual friend. And it was like,
is that your one time of actually breaking up with a friend?
Yeah, I learned my lesson. And I don't do that anymore.
I've had friendships end, but it was because of complex social dynamics amongst groups and couples and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a situation where there was a guy that I was a friend with and then something that he did to me or to someone else was like, now I have to end the friendship.
That's never happened to me, I don't think.
As I suggested, it would take a whole lot based on what happened in high school. I'm not saying it's a healthy thing. I mean, maybe I should have ended more friendships, but it just hasn't crossed my mind. And lastly, and this is something we can relate to because we are both aging.
Aged.
Study published in the journal Personal Relationships in 2017 found that men may have fewer friends as they grow older due to reliance on their partners for emotional support. I actually think that, so you've already described how you are like personally bucking this trend. You seem to be making an effort there.
Yeah.
It's not something that I have been doing. I have a fair amount of friends. I don't have too many friends that I talk to on a regular basis that we're like constantly doing stuff with each other, mostly because I feel connected enough, right? But I do see how this, like let's just say that me and you had a horrible breakup, went our separate ways. Something that is constantly being theorized is about to happen, just so you know. Not only are we gay, but we're also constantly about to break up.
Right.
Neither's been true ever. But I can totally see, because I have and I think I speak for both of us, I have a very deep emotional bond to my wife. Like we share everything together. We're not isolated. We haven't grown
apart. You feel like that's enough?
We haven't grown apart. As we've gotten older, we've grown together. We're better friends now than we were when we were youngsters. I get a lot out of our friendship and our time together. We like spending time together. We like doing things together. Like we like traveling with one another. And so I could see how this would be the case, where I would just kind of be like, I don't, as long as I got her, I'm all right. I like being by myself. And apparently the studies show that this is actually a pattern. It probably, I'm sure this goes both ways as you get older, like as you're in a couple of any description, and you kind of just are like, I got this person and it's hard to find time and to conjure up the effort to connect. And then that person dies.
Okay.
And then you're just old and alone.
Yeah,
that is kind of a scary situation.
I'm hedging my bets. I'm feeling pretty good, on that front.
Yeah, you're
I'll have a number of friends.
You're sowing some good seeds.
I'm not talking about Christy dying. I'm talking about you dying. But
yeah. But I
don't have a replacement for you. But I think the amalgamation of a bunch of other friends will just keep me above
but if
ground.
you fast forward into the distant future, I'm dead early because I'm tall, whatever. It's just you and Christy.
Right.
She's most likely going to outlive you because women on average live longer than men. But let's just say that there's an accident.
Okay, great.
She's old. I mean, you're both in your 80s. It's kind of like, yeah, she's in an accident. It's kind of like, well, it's going to happen one way or another. And so you're 85 and you're single. And so it puts you in that scenario. First of all, 85 single, you going to try to get with somebody?
But that's not.
No, it's just sexually.
That's not
let's just talk about that before we talk about
That's a whole
friends.
other podcast.
Like if you're 85 and you're finally single, you're going to go on like a dating website? What are you going to do?
Yeah, sure.
You think you have no desire to wet your willy at that point?
It's not going to be about desire. I just hope it's going to be about ability, and I hope that.
There's drugs for that, man.
Right. Well, there you go. Okay. Then yes.
So you're going to get laid at 85. So that's the first few weeks is you just getting laid as much as possible.
I mean, I'm not going to deny it.
But then comes friendship. Okay, so my question for you as it relates to that is, like, what would you do?
I have friends, Rhett.
Okay, so
I'm working on it now.
Yeah. Because I think
it's happening
at that point, I would join a group of some kind that was doing something like, we're planting trees, you know? Mm-hmm. And I feel like
let's get together and read the paper.
In the context of a group like that I would definitely do because I'd have the time, you know. Mm-hmm. I think I could generate a lot of friends really quickly. So I'm kind of
you can catch up.
I'm not. I guess ultimately I was saying
don't worry about it.
I'm not worried about it.
Don't worry
I can make fast friends when I want to.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Just be my friend. I'll be your friend whenever you want to do it. And then I'll be friends with other people when you don't. And then everybody's happy. I think this is working, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is working.
I got plans Friday night. I think I got plans Saturday night. And
what does your wife say about this?
I try to make plans with her first, and then when she taps out because it's too many plans, then I just fill everything else in. That's the way I do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't make plans.
I've started making more plans.
You know,
that's my thing.
Yeah, I don't make many. I'd like to make more activity plans.
You feel like this is a good ending point?
I mean, this is as good as any.
Okay. Want to bring you back to our Rhett and Link channel for my recommendation. Our song "You Are Here" is streaming everywhere, so enjoy that song. It makes more sense when you've watched the video, but then it's, since it was 1984, I created a playlist that was inspiration for the production of that track. So if you want to enjoy that, you can go to my Spotify account, which the best way to tell you to get to my Spotify playlist is to go to my Instagram profile and then click on my Spotify link.
You can't just search Link Neal on Spotify?
I don't know. So the playlist is called "You Are Here" Inspo. It's the inspiration for the "You Are Here" track. And if you only want to listen to one song, yep, that's me.
Yeah,
you can just search.
I just put Link
Neal
and you came
in
up.
Spotify. "Automatic" by the Pointer Sisters. I was so obsessed with that song when we were making "You Are Here," so you can check that out. See how these 31 minutes worth of tracks made their way into "You Are Here." There you go. That's my rec. Thanks for being my friend, Rhett.
I just realized that
Thanks for being my friend, Rhett.
No, thanks for being my friend.
I really miss you.
I miss you too, but
And you know what? I love you.
I love you too, man.
Look at that. Did you see that?
But I do have something to share.
Okay, yeah.
And that is that I didn't realize that my playlist for Locke's graduation party last year was public. Huh.
Yeah, you can make it private, or you can leave it.
I don't really use this. Maybe I should make that not public. Maybe I should make my whole profile not public.
If you want to let us know what you think, use #YourBiscuits and give us a call. Leave us a voicemail with your thoughts. 1-888-EARPOD1.
It's a pretty good playlist. I'll leave it up.
Okay.
It's just 7 songs.
Okay.
Hey guys, I just listened to the commencement speech episode, and when Link said that spreadsheets were sexy, I lost it. I graduated about 6 months ago with my accounting degree, and spreadsheets are sexy. Thank you so much. Bye.
To watch more Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist on the right.
To watch the previous episode of Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist to the left.
And don't forget to click on the circular icon to subscribe.
If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Thanks for being your mythical best.